Hello, everyone, and welcome to Accenti's Workshops to Build Community, a project made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. My name is Leach Accenti. I'm founding editor-in-chief of Accenti magazine. This is our 10th workshop in Accenti's third series of workshops. And if you missed the previous 9 workshops, please go to accenti.ca/workshops to build community. Most of the recordings are now available. Welcome to The Art of Seeing, Travel Photography with Robert T. Norton. Our workshop leader, Robert T. Norton, is a multidisciplined creative with decades of experience that have led to numerous publication credits and awards. Robert is a Toastmaster with over 90 presentations and workshops to his credit. And Robert has also won the Accenti Photo Award. I can't remember which year, or more than once, actually. Thank you very much for being here, Robert. The microphone is yours.
You're most welcome. Hello, everybody. Just bear with me a quick sec while I get the screen share, because you want to see the pictures, not me. The joys of tech. It worked great the last time. Okay. So welcome to the Art of Seeing, everyone, Travel Photography Workshop. It's my great pleasure to connect with you today and share part of my creativity journey. My hope is to inspire you to pick up your cameras and meet your creativity. Towards that end, in this workshop, I will provide you with some actionable techniques and we'll explore a few exercises together. Our workshop today is going to run for about 90 minutes. If you have a question, please raise your hand and Lucia will moderate. There'll also be Q&A at the end if we have time. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to reserve the right to defer the questions and continue the presentation so we make sure we get all the good information we're here for. Also, do not be shy about dropping some emojis if something resonates with you. Travel and photography, a natural pairing, don't you think? If yes, let me know with a heart or a thumbs up emoji in the chat. When we escape the daily grind and put ourselves in the path of new experiences, places, and cultures, we are also meeting our creativity. Now up on the screen now is image number 1 on my flight to Europe last May. How could I say no to that meeting? Here's a tip. If you're going to have your camera on board with you, always select a window seat. You never know when you're going to get a sky like that. So a bit about me, photography has been my hobby off and on for 43 years. Over the last decade, it's evolved into the foundation of an increasingly focused exploration of creativity, both mine and other people's. So far, this journey has embraced experiments in writing books, mixed media visual arts, spoken word, and the research and study of the creative process. Now, somehow, exploring these things often leads me back to my starting point, photography. On this journey so far, I've found immense fulfillment, and I'm now convinced that traveling a creative path leads us to happiness. My creative friends are the happiest people I know. Today's workshop is my chance to share some of that with you. Classic Paris, a great place to start our travels today. Our workshop journey will have us traveling along a path to making better photographs. How we do that is by strengthening our ability to see. Now, seeing is an art in and of itself. Looking is not always seeing. We humans see very selectively. We have to. Focusing on what draws our attention within the bigger picture. Conversely, a camera sees and records every single detail in front of it, indiscriminately. Therefore, it is you that must see both the subject you're photographing and its optimal composition. So we could ask ourselves, what is our visual literacy? How well do we see? Then, what if we had a process map to guide us to better photographs and enhance creativity, both during our travels and at home? Well, I put this little process map together for you. Happens. It's an acronym that you can use as a creativity nudge or as a planning tool to remind you to collect a diverse selection of images that will truly reflect your epic travels. You may also consider these as prompts to connect with your creativity. Why? Simply because it helps us to have a goal or an objective to pursue at the outset until we've settled into our creative zone. We're going to dive deeper into happens towards the back half of this workshop. But for now, as we move through the workshop, you've seen the categories. Keep an eye out for the images I'm about to show you and which category that might belong to, because there's often some overlap. So let's take a look at a selection of images. Please focus on each image and quickly ask yourself what appeals to you about it or not in some cases. Enter your faves and comments in the chat if you wish. Hope you enjoyed those. A natural starting point to examine the art of seeing is to ask ourselves, what makes a good photograph? Is it an expensive camera, a happy accident, or a highly skilled photographer with decades of experience? Let's start to unpack that and see where we land. Is it an expensive fancy camera? Well, not necessarily. The photos which you've seen so far were taken with a pro grade DLSR. Also, some were with a point and shoot camera, and some were even with an iPhone. Could you tell which photo was made with which device? Is it a happy accident? It might just be. Sometimes you just get lucky being in the right place at the right time. Still, it's up to us to see those lucky opportunities and to leverage them to make our photographs. Consider this important point. A photograph can be taken or made. Taken is a reactive response to a stimuli. It's basic, it's borderline instinct. Something catches our eye, we pick the camera up, we snap the shutter. When we make a photograph, it's more of a proactive assessment followed by our intentional action to produce a desired outcome in response to a stimuli. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with taking photographs. If you want to improve your results, however, you will need to start making your photographs with creative intent. And we're going to look at some specific ways you can do that as we travel through this workshop. Now, this photo you see on the screen, this majestic osprey, this was a happy accident. I happened to be in a national park in Florida one morning, doing some early morning bird photography, had a heavy 600 mil lens. There was this beautiful little bird, but it kept hopping from branch to branch. As soon as I framed it up and focused it, it would not sit still. So after about 2 minutes of chasing this bird around, moving my lens, I put it down because it was heavy. I was getting kind of tired. And I looked up in the sky in exasperation. And boy, am I ever glad I did. This osprey was sitting there kind of looking down at me saying, what are you wasting your time with that little bird for? I'm up here. I'm the photograph. So this bird posed for me on that branch for about 10 minutes, moving its head to and fro. And then the added bonus, it flew up and it circled around about 80 feet overhead, wings outstretched, just gliding, letting me take more pictures. So that was a beautiful moment. Happy accident. Love them. Is it a highly skilled photographer? Well, that depends on the subject matter, the photographic output being sought, and it can certainly be a matter of taste. Now, technical skills work best in tandem with eyes that can truly see. Consider this: improving your photography could start with putting your camera down and thinking, asking yourself questions. What is working in my photos? What could I do better? What am I missing? What else would I like to explore? Make your answers as specific and detailed as possible. And most importantly, when and how will you action them? The photo above was taken in Kings Canyon, Australia. We were on a 14,000-kilometer road trip around Australia, hit Uluru and the outback and all that good stuff. So I decided I want to pose up on this precipice, and it was just the weirdest thing. My friend was shooting the photograph from lower down, obviously, and having being that far out on a ledge with a camera in front of your face, you lose your perspective or depth perception. So I really wasn't sure where I was, and I was telling my buddy, "Hurry up and take the picture because I want to make sure I'm not too close to the edge." So, what makes a good photograph? I think I can say, in all honesty, the number one thing is you. You can take a good picture with just about any camera if you practice the art of seeing. So, it begins and ends with you. Your camera is just a machine, it's a tool that needs you to unlock its potential. So, where that leaves us is beginning with a self-assessment of our creativity. Okay, we don't worry about the camera so much, but how are we seeing? So again, you want to ask yourself questions. What is your creative why? Why are you picking up a camera? Are you inspired and curious today? Are you excited to go out and photograph? Is your comfort zone too comfortable? When was the last time you tried a new photographic technique, pushed yourself? How will you push your creative boundaries today or tomorrow or next week? Are you open to possibilities and creative growth? Pay close attention to your answers. Do they reflect possibility language or obstacle language? So, our self talk and language is very, very important. Is your photography limited to what you initially see? When you press the shutter solely as a reaction to something that caught your eye, then you are taking photos. Making photos is about getting beyond those initial limitations. Making photos with intent is a process that requires you to invest in solving a problem. The problem: how can I best interpret this subject with my camera? Meet my 3-year-old nephew, Jackson. In the fall of 2020, in between pandemic lockdowns, I introduced him to the time honored Canadian tradition of playing in the leaves. It was a beautiful moment of discovery for both of us, and I'll always remember it. You see, Jackson was not worried about the pandemic, nor was he concerned if he had the right color jacket on, or if anyone was watching and judging, or about getting it perfect. In fact, children are the absolute masters of imperfect action. So, a key tip I'll share with you: when it comes to your creativity, be curious like a 3-year-old. We were all three once. The trouble is, we've forgotten that. So, try and get back in touch with that. I encourage you to invest some time in exploring your creativity. Perhaps the single most important investment that you can make in getting your photography to the next level is via understanding and nurturing your creative mindset. All right, here's our first exercise. So please grab your paper and pens. For the next few minutes, our focus is on writing quickly. I learned this from Leisha in one of her workshops. You want to write quickly. You want to capture the first thoughts that come to mind about any of the prompts you see up on the screen. There is no right or wrong. You can write to only one of them, to all of them, or to a few of them. Remember, as you go through these, ask yourself the question: what is your creative why? Are you inspired or curious? Is your comfort zone too comfortable? How will you push your creative boundaries? When will you? Are you open to possibilities and creative growth? Please begin, We'll take 3 minutes for this exercise and then open the floor for some of you to share if you wish. Okay, we're on our last 30 seconds. It's now or never. All right, fantastic. That's time. So how'd you guys do? Anybody care to share? Just put your hand up.
Josephine has her hand up.
Okay, I can't see it on my screen.
It's okay.
So
I'll tell you when someone
perfect.
else.
Josephine, please go ahead.
Josephine, unmute, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good morning. Possibility is bounded only by thought, like the judgmental mind, requires openness, to be in tune with the instincts, the beyond is everywhere. Try something upside down, close up from a blurred distance. Think of the story the photograph wants to tell and let it be like haiku. Capture that moment, but echo or invoke the universal.
Definitely just be open to it. And if you tap into that inner voice or that inner creativity, you'll be guided to the image. You still have to show up and have the camera, batteries
Yeah,
charged, and
yeah,
be in there. But I find as I warm up and get into it, the photographs present themselves to me once I'm kind of in that zone. I
excellent.
see it
Thank you.
much more with painting, with
Yes,
visual arts, than I do with photography. But it's definitely there. So that's something possibility. Yes.
thank you.
Anybody else like to share some thoughts? All right. Well,
We
if
have
there's anyone
somebody
else.
here in North Bay.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Louise. Thank you.
When I take a picture or a photo, I like to create curiosity to the looker who's going to be looking at the photo in the future. And uh, the placement of the subject, is it going to be of interest to them? And is it going to be a keepsake to them if I was to present that photo to them, or is it going to be a throwaway in the future? So I want to make, I brought in the curiosity, the comfort zone too of a photo. So when I even look at those Chinese horoscopes, that struck, I like the creativity of it because it was just all thrown there. And if I was having a Chinese party, I might make that as an invitation, so to speak, photo.
Mhm. Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have some wisdom nuggets they want to toss out or experiences?
Okay, then I will, please. I could. This is possibility, and it's very personal to me because I've been watching Landscapes of the Year artists on Prime TV, and because of watching lots of painters working on landscape, I've slowed down how I'm looking out. A particular window I look out many times a week over a pond scene. And I'm now seeing things in that landscape that I had noticed before, colors in the winter, a tree, skeletons, moving snow, that kind of thing. One artist, however, on this Landscape of the Year, he did detailed painted insets into his larger landscape paintings. And that should be a possibility for me, shouldn't it? To take micro pictures in that landscape in the pond.
Definitely. If that's what's calling to you, go for it.
I like that.
But what a great era we live in where we can see all these talented creatives doing these things from the comfort of our couch on a big screen TV. You know, this didn't exist pre-internet. Josephine, you'd like to say something else?
Yeah, I was thinking about expectations and how like let the expectation part of it take the back seats, and it should inspire us but not confine us.
Definitely. We have to manage our expectations along with many other things in the creative process. I know from experience, so when I'm editing, for example, I'll know if I have it within 3 photos. And if I can't dial it in the way I want,
Yeah.
then I move on to something else because that's not my day. So I don't get frustrated and I don't try not to have expectations around it. I just understand that I have this performance level or skill set. So if I'm not there that day, it's not the day for that. So, you know, go cook something, go paint something, go
Yeah.
mow the lawn, do something else, and come back at another point in time. But that's about releasing or letting go of the expectations because there's no point staying with it and getting frustrated
Good, thank you.
for me.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on or would anybody else like to say a couple words? Okay, if we're good. Let us move on. If the slide's going to cooperate. There we go. So your creativity is your beautiful journey. Embrace your creative mindset, nurture it, invest in it, cherish it as a partner with whom you are free to explore and to experiment, liberated from rigid expectations around the outcomes you produce. Okay, so what a perfect comment from Josephine on expectations, and it set that slide up perfectly. So here's Jackson again with some words from old President Harry Truman. Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. So as you travel along your squiggly path of creativity, take a lesson from the children and Harry. Let curiosity and discovery outshine anxiety and fear. Embrace imperfect action. The famous music producer Rick Rubin said, "Do what you can with what you have. Nothing more is needed." It really is that simple when you focus on an action versus a future outcome. On enjoying the process in the moment and not polluting that moment fretting about future results and expectations. Your actual practice, being in the now and the moment, is where your fulfillment lies. Later, you'll get to look at beautiful photos and enjoy those as well, but that's a different moment. So we've talked about mindset. Our focus will now shift from creative mindset to photographic techniques. These two form a very powerful synergy when you understand and respect them as integral to the process. So we need our mindset, and we also need creative photographic techniques. They work best in tandem, more so than on their own. So when we're answering those creativity questions, it's helpful to have some of these tools in our toolbox. Our tools are the various photographic techniques, and first and foremost among these is composition. Composition is foundational to the art of seeing. Composition is our creativity, producing a tangible outlet. So with that in mind, let's now explore a few composition techniques that can make a real impact on your photography while acquainting you with the art of seeing. Uluru, aka Ayers Rock in the Australian outback. I was fortunate to spend 3 days there in 2018. This image was taken on day 1, shortly after our arrival. Instinctively, I knew this day would offer me the best photos because of the clouds in the sky. I'm a real, advocate for clouds. I was right. The next 2 days we were there, the skies were cloudless, infinite blue, which was also nice, but not as nice as this for me. Now, it's natural instinct for many of us to place the primary subject, in this case Uluru, in the center of the photo. To make better photos, we need to resist that centering instinct and employ what is called the rule of thirds. Look closely at Uluru, the primary subject of the image. The composition question I asked myself as I set this photo up, what is more interesting, the sky or the foreground? For me, it was the sky. And so I placed Uluru near the bottom third of the image with a little foreground to provide some context. So now you see the rule of thirds I employed for this photo. Bottom justified the primary subject, Uluru, and gave emphasis to the sky, in this case, 2/3 of the image. Another composition consideration. I had to wait about 20 minutes for the clouds to arrive in a way that they were not casting shadows on Uluru. You see, the image, it was worth the wait. The moral of the story, slow down, avoid rushing your photography unless the situation requires it. And we're going to get to some rush photography later in this presentation. Always remember, you are controlling the placement of the primary subject. So keep it out of the center unless that is the best composition. This horizontal rule of thirds is critical for landscape and cityscape photographs. The horizontal question is always the same. Which one makes the more interesting image? The sky, the foreground, or both? Now, photography is a form of storytelling. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as the old saying goes. Seeing is believing is another accepted truism. The next 2 photos I'll show you offer additional detail to the story of Uluru. The photo you see now is looking back down after the initial ascent. When I view it, I'm instantly transported back to that wonderful memory and that fantastic day of the climb in the 35 degrees Celsius Australian heat with no humidity, thankfully. Now, what I did not know as I made the climb, and only found out later, was that 36 people have died while climbing Uluru, mostly heart attacks or from losing their footing and tumbling over the edge. So this photo tells us a story about the steepness of the ascent and later the descent. Notice the horizon line, okay? And then contrast that to the grade of Uluru, which is very close to 45 degrees, pretty steep. Also, note the irregular surface of Uluru. Very easy to trip, fall, and tumble over the side. So here's a full rule of thirds grid, both horizontal and vertical. This shot was no accident. I watched these riders for a while. I surveyed the background, and then I anticipated where the action would occur, composed the photo, and waited. Yes, I was in the right place at the right time. But I also practiced the art of seeing, and I composed this image with mindful intent. So this image is going to lead us into our next technique. An advanced composition technique is wallpaper. Okay, think of it as the secondary subject that rests behind your primary one. When you start composing using wallpaper in conjunction with your primary subject, you are making photographs. Okay, this image was taken in Barcelona in 2017. I was wandering through the city looking for photographic opportunities. I saw these BMX trick riders and decided to take a few shots. So my first question as I was setting up, where's my wallpaper? Well, it was the colorful graffiti behind the riders. And that's probably what I drew my attention more so than the riders themselves. My second question, what angle or position is going to give me the best wallpaper in relation to the rider who is the primary subject? Now, do you notice the bonus wallpaper? It's the two stationary riders. Note how the primary subject, the main rider, is right between the two stationary riders. Think that was a happy accident? Think again. That was the image I composed with mindful intent. It took me a few to get it dialed in, but that was what I was after.
Excuse me,
Sure.
Robert. The previous image, Josephine asks, if you could have blurred the graffiti and other bikers in this photo, would you have tried that?
No, I wanted the graffiti crisp. What I should have done if I was thinking, which would have been interesting, I like a technique called panning, and I use that when I shoot car races. So I shoot on a slow shutter speed, but I move the camera with the car. So that completely smears or blurs the background. So it's a great point you raise. That kind of smeared background would have been excellent for this graffiti. It would have been very colorful. And it looks like an abstract painting while the rider still is in crisp focus. The trouble with these riders, they're not moving as fast as the racing cars do. So it'd be a bit of a push. But if I had been thinking in the moment, definitely. And that's a good point. Try a shot like this that's crisp and everything in focus, and then try another one that's not. Shall we go on? So a short 35-kilometer trip from my house brought me and my camera to the Well. This is a new mixed-use development in Toronto. And it opened in late November of 2023. Picture an ultra-modern Galleria type space. Note the strong linear conversion that nudges your eye to move through the image from top to bottom or from bottom to top, like a funnel. Linger and explore what is behind the geometric coverings. It is other high-rise towers, as well as reflections of the lights from the floors below of the Galleria. At first glance, what looks like a very simple image turns out to have several layers of complexity and nuance because of my choice of wallpaper, as well as my opting to choose a classic black and white for this image. Now, if it hadn't been that day with the rain on top and the lighting the way it was, I probably wouldn't have shot this image. It wouldn't have been interesting enough, but just the reflection, I thought, wow, I have to get this. There's something interesting here. So I don't ask why, I just set it up and shoot it. So here's another wallpaper. This image in Havana, Cuba was sort of a happy accident. I was on a mission to photograph old classic cars. It's one of the things I do when I'm in Havana. And I like the pedestrian crosswalk as my wallpaper. So I set up and I waited. The happy accident was this beautiful red convertible bookended by two pedestrians. Still in Havana, a few years back, friends of mine asked me to photograph their wedding. What a blast. Over 2 days, we visited and photographed in 7 distinct areas of Havana. The variety of locations really gave a unique perspective to the images. Among my favorite was this one, the soccer game. Notice the wallpaper, eclectic street art. Again, not an accident. This image was composed with mindful intent. And the kids, by the way, we kind of intruded on children's soccer game, and they were just mesmerized by the bride in her gown and the two photographers who came out. And then we said to them, hey, do you guys want to be in the picture? So some of them did, and some of them were a bit shy, but we had a lot of fun. So Accenti does their Capture an Italian Moment contest. And when I saw this, I immediately thought of Dominic and Lucia and Accenti. Talk about an Italian moment. Police taking a gelato break. How could I resist this photo? The challenge, kind of risky, as police rarely like having their photo taken. I had no time to compose this image. I snapped 2 photos on my iPhone, and I knew I'd sort it out later on the computer. So what we're going to explore now is what I call the image cleaning process. So specifically by paying attention to what is living at the edges or borders of our images, this is one of the most powerful techniques that you can use to enhance the appeal of your images. So the goal of cleaning your image borders is to eliminate any distracting elements that are competing with your primary subject for the viewer's attention. Things like partial objects, reflective highlights, overhead wires, or posts. The yellow boxes you see on the image are what I'm looking at cleaning. These are elements that for me add little to nothing, and they're making the image too busy. So there's too much for the viewer's eye to look at and process. So doing this can be very subjective. You're really simply looking for what pleases your eye, and that might even be 2 versions of the same image. So let's take a look. Here are my 2 cleanings. Which one appeals to you more? I prefer the one on the left because it tells a more fulsome story. What is that mysterious hand grabbing the wall on the left about? And to the right, we see the shop proprietor serving up a gelato in the mirror reflection. This version pleases my eye and mind because it has more layers to it, both context and mystery. So that's one of the things in my photography. I strive to add some complexity to my images, to get the viewer to linger and take a second look, perhaps to discover something new. So my preferred version is on the left and the original image is on the right. Notice how much stronger the image is when we've subtracted all the crap out of it. On the right side in particular, the door frame and the longer mirror, as well as the stairs, and of course the 2 overhead pot lights. So what I want you to consider here is that photography is a subtractive process. Whether you're in the field while you're taking images or in post-production on your computer or your phone, you're always faced with decisions about what stays and what goes. This is the art of seeing. Now, if you have a subject that's really caught your eye, then explore it deeply by taking several shots with slight variance in some composition, if you have the time. I don't recommend slowing down when you're photographing police, but you can do as you wish. So with less pressure situations, avoid one and done, just snapping a picture and moving on to the next thing. Because often your best photo will be the 3rd one you shoot or the 11th one. Very rarely is it the first one. At least for me, it's not. So the art of seeing, and in fact, photographic composition, is about addition and subtraction. Good composition arises when we answer these 2 questions. What do we want in our photograph? What do we not want in our photograph? So really, the art of seeing is about us answering those 2 questions. Okay, exercise number 2. Please grab your paper and pens again. And for the next few minutes, we're going to focus on writing quickly again because we're outrunning our inner censor. So capture the first thoughts that come to mind for any of the question prompts. Again, no right or wrong. You can write to one of them in detail, to all of them, or to just a few. Please begin. We're going to take our 3 minutes and then open the floor again if anybody wishes to share. Please begin. Okay, we're in our last minute. Okay, so that's 3 minutes. So how did that feel for everyone? Anybody want to share some wisdom nuggets with the group? Josephine, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think the composition techniques that I want to explore is how to focus in so that the elements in the photograph lead the eye towards the subject, so that the other elements kind of frame and lead. And then what's missing that I need to acquire is more is like majority of my photographs have been taken on my phone. I have a camera, but I would like to learn the technical skills. These are terms I've heard, but I need to be comfortable with aperture, the shutter speed, the settings. And I know there's probably tons of videos, but I would love somebody to walk me through like this. These are the things you can achieve with your camera.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of that will be playing and discovering too.
Yeah, but it helps if you invest a little bit of time in the videos online first. So just, Google on your iPad, depth of field,
Yeah.
and you'll see, like I shoot my camera on aperture priority typically. I favor that over shutter speed.
Aperture priority.
Okay. And when I favor shutter speed is when I'm shooting fast moving objects. So that could be a bird in flight or a racing car. So then I switch over. So again, think of it as a toolbox with a bunch of tools. You're
Excellent.
not using a hammer and a screwdriver at the same time. You're going to use one thing. So aperture priority, if you read about your camera and the lenses, a lot of lenses, their sweetest aperture, their crispest photos are taken at f11.
Okay.
Okay. So then you see, if you say, okay, I want crisp photos, I'm going to shoot at f11. Now the consideration becomes, do I have enough light in this situation to give me a shutter speed? Typically, they say shooting below a 60th or a 30th of a second, you're going to get some camera shake unless you're very, very steady and you control your breathing.
Okay.
I can shoot handheld at 30th and below sometimes. I'll show you guys another trick later when we get to the section about tripods and gears, but there's an actual trick to shoot in low light conditions without a tripod.
Okay.
So I'll share that with you. But definitely explore aperture,
Yeah.
and that relates, aperture controls your depth of field.
Okay.
Okay. And then you say, well, I want to set my aperture first. And then what am I shooting? What shutter speed do I need to freeze action or to blur action? Okay. And try, the way to really learn is try shooting the same subject with all different settings
Okay.
and see how that works out for you.
Thank you. As a follow-up to the class, if you could share with us like which video series do you find are good? Or I don't know if you'd like to do that.
The trouble is I've been shooting photography for so long that I learned all that stuff before there were ever any
Yeah.
videos.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
don't
Thank
watch
you.
any series. There's nothing I could recommend, but I think if you just went on and looked through a few and
Yeah.
let the pictures guide you. So if you see a picture and you go, "Ooh, I
Yeah.
like that,"
Yeah.
that might be a video worth watching.
Okay. Thank you.
Or if it's all about racing cars or something you're not interested in, I don't need to watch that. So let that guide you, and you'll find yourself in the right place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Robert,
you.
a few things
Yes.
the chat. So Serena says, I'd like to explore the rule of thirds and wallpaper. Jacqueline writes, please take into account that some people have Samsung phones. And Kathy, so Kathy wants to know, I guess, Kathy, you can just unmute and ask your question, but to raise your hand, at least on my Zoom here, you click on React. That's where there's the heart. And when you open that up, you see the emojis, but underneath you see raise hand. So that's how you would raise your hand. Or you could just raise your hand and okay. And Ninette, Robert, one more. Ninette writes, what's the story and more effective editing? All right, let's start with Kathy.
Okay, so what was Kathy's question, or is she going to say it live?
Yeah, I'm going to say it live. No, it wasn't really a question, but you reminded me when I first started taking pictures, I had a beautiful little 400 millimeter lens, and I was so excited being able to take these really close-up shots of like birds, their eyes, and the beautiful patterns in their eyes. But I've realized, that in some ways, then by not taking the landscape around them, I'm missing out on possible story. And in enlarging my photos now, I've discovered that, branches where birds hang out really become a beautiful subject matter in themselves next to the birds.
Absolutely. I got a picture of a duck one time floating on the water, and it wasn't really the duck I was interested in. It was all the intricate pattern of the reflection of the branches and the trees above this creek. And
Yes.
they were all kind of circular and asymmetrical, and the duck was swimming through them. So the duck was really the only thing that was in focus. So it was very abstract and very artistic. So definitely agree with you on that. And that's why something like happens, having a little cheat code sheet for yourself. Okay, before I go to the racetrack, I might write down 5 different pictures I want to take, because in the excitement of the moment and photographing, you won't remember. It's almost like going grocery shopping without a shopping list. You know the 15 things you want to buy, but you had a list with 18. So you're going to come home missing 3 of them most times. So make a little list and say, yeah, I want to get close-up shots, but then I also want to get further back photographs, and look for abstracts, look for patterns. Nature is wonderful source. There's so many intricate artistic patterns in nature that you can just find and photograph if you're practicing the art of seeing and you're looking for those things.
Thank you so much for that idea about the list. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Just, it doesn't have to be long, 3 to 5 things. I want to try this technique today. I want to try that. All right. And that's how you practice and build on it. So we
Robert?
had another, yes.
Yeah, Janet has a hand up. Janet is in the group with 5 people.
Okay.
And Antonia is going to be speaking.
Hi there. I'm
Hello.
fairly familiar with photography. I actually do a lot of astrophotography.
Hmm.
But one of I feel what is missing in my photos is, or the expectation that it has to look like a finished product without doing any editing at all. So I think what I need to acquire is editing skills. And how much emphasis do you put on editing your photos?
Well, there's 2 schools of thought. Some of my friends that we photograph, we are kind of purists in getting the shot right and minimizing post-production on the computer after. So we have a preference to slow our photography down in the field and really practice and dial in. So we're paying a lot of attention to composition and cropping right in the field. But that being said, if you're shooting for a long day, you may get tired, you may get distracted, you could be hungry, you may start to get lazy or sloppy, and that's fine because the computer can save you afterwards if need be. Other people, they just get out and it's guns blazing. They just shoot, 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 shoot. That's interesting. I'll take a picture. I'll worry about it later on the computer. So it's really what method you prefer. I'm a one-shot guy. I like to get it in the field. I've stood beside people at racetracks and they're on burst mode. So I'm shooting one photo of a car and very consciously and intentionally doing so. and the other person's just pressing the shutter and it's just going and they're shooting 100 images while I shoot one.
Right.
And it makes me chuckle because I say, wow, that's a lot of editing when you get home to find the one good one out of the 100.
I actually went on a storm chase and the same thing happened. I was waiting for the opportune moment, whereas someone else had it on burst. So they got all the shots of the lightning and whatever, but yeah.
But yeah, for something like lightning, I think you would have to do that. So that's a technique you need to explore. And then we get to something like some of the phones, in particular the Samsungs. I know that they're capable of shooting video, and then you can extract a photo from the video. So that kind of solves everything. You have a nice video if you like that, but then you could just go through the video. There's my lightning flash. I'm pulling that out as a photograph. So there's just so much to explore and enjoy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we had a question from Nanette in the chat.
Nanette writes, what's the story and more effective editing?
So I'm not sure I understand that. What's the story?
Nanette, do you want to unmute and Nanette, would you like to unmute? No, it's not working.
Okay, I
Okay.
think I got that.
Yes.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I actually, that was just a comment that I enjoy photography just for myself. So I do what I love doing and with the picture, but I don't think I look at the story. So I think I've got to focus on not just that image, but what story am I trying to tell? And I loved the part about editing. I try editing, but I think, again, what should I keep? And not to focus just on the primary focus, because there's a story to tell in some of the things that are happening around that.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the most interesting things live at the edges of our photographs, right? But when we're so focused on the person or the primary subject or the car or the plant or the bird, we kind of focus 90% of our attention on that. And we sometimes we need to step back and look at a more fulsome picture and consider all the elements. So it's a fluid, dynamic thing. When you're sometimes you have it when you're photographing, and then other times you're in that moment and you're so focused on something. You're going to see this. I'm going to show you images later where I missed some things and then had stuff I wouldn't want in the image normally, but I was so seduced by what I was photographing that I became oblivious to the other stuff. So we're only human at the end of the day, and we do our best. And the thing is, have fun. Have fun while you're out there. Try and manage your expectations, avoid too much judgment. We're all works in progress. So if we're a work in progress, we're always getting better, provided we pick up our cameras. Okay, let's move on. Ventimiglia, Italy, pretty little seaside town right at the border with France. I rent an apartment there for 5 days this past May. So this time we're going to flip the script and begin with the end work and work backwards. This is the finished image after I've cleaned it up. So let's take a look at the original. Take a scan of this photo. What needs to get subtracted? I look at this now and I wonder why I was so lazy and sloppy. It seems like autopilot on this one. Was I too focused on the town and the clouds and their reflection in the sea? Or was I distracted and rushed by the thoughts of meeting my friends for a pizza 10 minutes down the road? Anyhow, no big deal at all, just a little TLC on the computer later on. So the yellow boxes denote the distractions that got subtracted. Too much sea at the bottom, the shrub and the concrete at the right, and the ship mast at the left. The green box shows the main crop, or what I decided to keep. This is how I should have composed the image in the moment that I took it. But hey, I get lazy sometimes. The other thing too, I didn't have in my notes, but I'll just kind of add this ad hoc. It's not bad if you're not sure about your crop when you have the camera. Just shoot a very big picture and include everything. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Maybe later when you get it home on the computer, if you have a nice big monitor, then you can really have it a good assessment and you're not rushed. You're in the comfort of your own home. Okay. So you don't have to get it perfect every time. And if you're ever in doubt or you're not feeling it, just take a big picture and then do your subtraction when you get home on the computer. Give yourself permission to do that. So back to our rule of thirds again. This is an example when placing the primary subject in the middle of the photo works very well. Okay, whenever you're faced with a mirror reflection, in this case, the town and the clouds are mirrored in the calm water, centering your primary subject yields kind of a visual symmetry to the image. So you want to consider this. Your composition techniques are your tools in the toolbox, as we already mentioned. Which composition tool you will need to achieve your desired photographic result is the question you ask yourself. Using a different tool produces a different result. What if you were to combine several composition tools at once? If you do that, you are making photographs. So again, the optimal composition in this case is a mirror image. And that's because, that's because of what I've already explained. I've got my notes a bit crossed here. I turned this one to black and white because the color palette was very, very bland. A gray fall sky and dull water. So black and white was the obvious choice for this image. The point I'm making here is that keep asking yourself these questions. Whether in the field shooting or in post-production on the computer after, how can I make this image more interesting and appealing and exciting? What is the story I'm trying to convey? Another mirror image and another time for the primary subject to be in the center. What I like about this photo, apart from the reflection, are the silhouettes of the building and the trees, and the sunset and lights in the buildings, and how these contrast with the blue twilight sky and the water. These bakers are in Havana, Cuba. They were on a break. They were watching me photograph old American cars across the street. I crossed over and asked them if they'd pose for me. They agreed and gave me a very stiff, formal pose. Have you ever photographed strangers or even friends or family? They immediately stiffen up when you've got the camera. So that's what these guys did. And it wasn't what I was after. But I humored them and took the shot anyway, because I already had another photo in mind while I was taking that first one. After that first photo, we chatted for a while. And then I got excited and I told, I have a great idea for another photo. And I asked them to pose in the way that you see them now and instructed them. You read your newspaper, you look away, don't look at me, look away from the camera. And so that's the image, was exactly what I was after. So the point here is that you let your photography be a way for you to connect with people. That's an important part of your travels. And the fellow reading the newspaper, he happened to have a cousin who lived in Toronto. So that's what I discovered while we were talking. And that's probably why they humored me and let me take this picture, that they cooperated. This image is the H in happen. It is pure history and humanity. Some folks wear their hearts on their sleeves. This young construction worker in Havana wears Che Guevara on his chest. Again, just like the bakers in the previous slide, I asked them to look away from the camera. Also notice the wallpaper in this one, a diverse mix of textures, brick, corrugated metal, door, and the weather-beaten wood. Gives a little bit more interest. So we don't always need to shoot people completely in profile. How about zooming in on the details sometimes, just to change it up a little bit? You want to vary your travel portfolio of images you take. So this fellow was fixing his bicycle in Havana Vieja. Notice his young daughter gazing wistfully from the curbside. What is she looking at? Also notice the hands, the tools, and the open bag where his quest for the perfect tool remains unsolved. Will he find it? It's the unanswered question. This image has a nuance to it that the previous two did not have. And for me, that makes it more interesting. Both of these images have minor composition issues. Do you see what they are? If so, Enter them in the chat if you do. Now, they may be not composition issues for you, but they are for me. Do we have anything in the chat? Okay, I'll move
Not
on.
yet. Oh, wait a minute. Josephine, on the left, I would have cropped out a bit over the art wall.
Yeah, could definitely have done that. But as I explained now in this one, you see that it's circled in yellow. So in the soccer game, that's part over in the left, it's overexposed. It's kind of a hot spot. So it stands out for the wrong reason. Yet I don't want to crop it out because then I'll lose the two boys and also the head of the wallpaper woman, the street painting behind them. I like those. They strengthen the image because they kind of enhance the story being told for me. So it's a compromise. I'm going to accept that flaw because I think it makes a stronger image. It appeals more to me. And then the kiss photo has part of a bus running through it. That does not need to be in the image, or does it? What do you think? This is the one I told you. I was too focused on the bride and the groom. I was seduced by them. My attention was completely on them, and it was not on the background. So this image would have changed if I had have done a last check beyond looking at them to the background, and I would have seen the bus and I would have said, okay, stop, wait 2 seconds, let the bus clear, take the picture. But I was caught up in the moment. So it's fine. I can live with it. Salerno, Italy, out and about for a morning coffee and some street life photos. I paused to look at an eclectic junkyard workshop for photo ops. The owner saw me and started talking some harmless smack to break up the monotony of his morning. I asked him to come and pose with the Rocky by the gate of his workshop yard. We shared a good laugh and I got a few funny pics. So what this is, right place, right time, right idea, right attitude. Your creativity can connect you with people and thereby opening the door for photographic opportunities. Funny story to share with you. I was sharing some travel photos with a friend and they remarked how much they liked the Passeggiata image that you see on the screen. It wasn't one of my favorites from that trip. However, a few weeks later, I was looking for 3 entries to submit to the Accenti photo competition. I had 2 good ones I liked, but I was struggling to find the third one. Then I recalled the words of my friend and decided, I'll throw this photo Passeggiata in as the 3rd entry. A very fortuitous choice as it turned out. Passeggiata took first place in the competition and earned me a $1,000 prize. I treated my friend to lunch to celebrate and to thank them. So, exercise number 3 beckons. Please look over Passeggiata. What do you see? What stands out? What do you think made this image a prize winner? What do you like or dislike about the image? So for this exercise, you can either write and share or enter your thoughts directly into the chat, whatever you prefer. And we'll just take 2 minutes for this one because we're running a little behind.
Robert, before we do
Yep.
that, I just want to read Anna's comment.
Mhm.
The photo on the left, so this would be a few photos back. Had you looked at it in only black and white, that would be the photo with the couple and the soccer. Yep.
No, I never did that one in black and white because I like the color of the laundry up near the top and the kids, but I could. And also kind of the background with the girl, she's in color. So there was enough color in this that I liked it as it was. But yeah, definitely it's always an option that's on the table. Certainly in black and white, the bride would be highlighted in that white dress and the groom in his dark suit. So they would really stand out or pop out of the image in black and white. So yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. I may go back and fool around with that at some point. All right, we've had a couple of minutes on this one, so the floor is open if anyone would like to offer some editorial critiques. Bearing in mind that this did get $1,000 in my pocket. So it obviously somebody liked it. The judges liked it. So anybody at all? Anything you see stands out to you?
Some
Dislike?
some comments in the chat.
Yep.
Okay, Kathy writes, sense of history between the two signs, current and ancient. Sense of the figure on the left soon to disappear behind the doors as the figure has on the right. That's from Kathy. Anna Nobile, the wall with the Via Roma sign is at an angle. It throws the entire photo off kilter in a good way. And then Anna Stratford, I kind of like hidden stuff in photos, mystery. So the fellow's knees, and yet the framing of the two signs above, clarity, the contrast of black and white versus nice.
Wonderful. Thank you. So for me, Passeggiata was about an asymmetry of textures. I happen to be sitting on a terrace cafe just across the street from this scene. So just across the street from Via Roma on the other side. So I'm looking across the street. And I immediately noticed, the decrepit wall with the plaster punched out of it. And then I saw Via Roma, and I love the city of Rome. So I thought, okay, that's got my attention, and it's a nice ceramic, artistic road sign. And then I looked. So really, it was the asymmetry of textures. So we're talking about the damaged plaster, this sign, then the weathered door to the left, and of course the paving stones in the street are asymmetrical. I also like the old man, all in black, reading the notice on the door and the sign above that linking this photo to Ravello on the Amalfi Coast. What I completely missed, and what I think Anna picked up on, was the other man to the center right who's sitting down and only partially visible. And if you look very closely, I don't know how much you can see it on your screens, but if you look past the legs and the hand on his lap, you can just see his sunglasses and the peak of his cap at the top. So I completely missed that when I shot this image because this was shot in about 2004, so well before I started thinking about composition the way I do now. I was attracted by the wall, the Via Roma sign, the guy. So all the things I mentioned, the other thing, I didn't even see that second guy. So again, that was my happy accident on this one.
Robert, we have a comment from Federica.
Yep.
The crossed legs definitely caught my attention too. It almost looks as if it is the initial frame of a movie, moving from one detail, the address of the street, to the main scene where we see the crossed legs and the man standing there.
And then the man approaching him, are they friends? Are they in-laws? Are they going to have an argument or a conversation? We don't know, but something's going to happen. So definitely, hopefully a Fellini movie. So what would a trip be without a few selfies? A selfie can take you back to the exact moment, where you were, who you were with, and what that moment meant to you. I typically take a few selfies over the course of my travels, mostly when it's meaningful to me and when it locks in a memory of something unique on the trip. The images you see on the screen are my twist on the selfie. I compose the shot, and then I give instructions of what I would like in the image and hand the camera over to a travel buddy. Back in 2017, I was privileged to enjoy a private tour of Fidel Castro's room, a penthouse suite at the Havana Trip Libre Hotel in the Vedado neighborhood in Havana. When my friend who worked at the hotel asked if I want a photograph of myself sitting at Fidel Castro's desk, my answer was an emphatic yes. Great memory, preserved forever with a photograph. Night photography is a little bit of extra work. A tripod, a cable release, and a slow shutter speed was how I made this image in the iconic Piazza della Repubblica in Rome a few years back. You can't get this photo with a flash on your camera. Note the light blur of the passing traffic and the people near the fountain. And finally, the fountain itself and the illuminated buildings behind it. Make a point on your travels to experiment with some night photography. It will add some diversity to your image portfolio, and it's a lot of fun. Our OG artist, Mother Nature, gives us incredible photographic opportunities, and this gorgeous sunset in Sydney Harbor was her gift to me on that day. Funny story, on this shoot, my buddy set up his tripod so that we could use a cable release to facilitate the long exposure times needed to get this image. Turned out he'd lost the mounting plate, so we had a tripod and cameras, but no way to attach the camera to the tripod. Damn, I thought, look at that epic sky. This is cruel fate. Are we done here? And then that little inner voice chimed in and said, you are getting this photo, figure it out. So I'm looking around the environment. How can we solve this problem? Directly in front of us was a white picket fence. I thought, what if I jam my camera in between the two fence pickets? Would it hold steady? It did. And so I linked up the cable release to the camera, took about 10 exposures as the light evolved. Anytime I look at this photo, it reminds me of that story, and that perseverance is often rewarded. So here's some of the gear I use for long exposure, slow shutter speed, night photography, and bird photography and Formula One, just without the tripod, the lens. This tripod does not travel with me. It is too heavy and it takes up too much valuable luggage space on overseas trips. It is my go-to tripod for car road trips and photography in the Greater Toronto area. Also, I prefer an old school wired cable release because the wireless ones need batteries and may have a technical glitch. Simple is better. Full disclosure, I'm an advocate of traveling light, and so I rarely ever bring a full-size tripod on tour with me. For my travel kit, I typically opt for one of the smaller tripods shown on the screen and my old school wired cable release. This equipment can handle most travel situations, and they're not onerously heavy or bulky to lug around. Now, I told you earlier I'd give you another little trick. No tripod, no problem. Simply scan your immediate environment for a stable platform that you can rest your camera on. That can be a wall, a door frame. In this case, it was a lamppost. Okay, so you stabilize yourself and the camera by jamming it up against a stationary object and then press the shutter. So the photo you see on the screen now was made by pressing my camera up against a street lamp post. Anything that's solid and stationary can be used. Sometimes photography is about improvisation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. As we've already know from an earlier slide, imperfect action is always a better choice than perfect inaction. What's going on here? What do you see? What is going on here was me trying to turn a very boring image into a provocative one to tease the viewer's brain and visual perception. Are the chairs, the sea, and the sky somehow in contravention of the laws of gravity? Let's look at the evolution of this image. Sicily beach life. This image was all about the lines, the horizon, the shoreline, and in particular, the symmetry of the beach chairs. Note the boring cloudless sky. This is a very unexciting image to me. And yet, I took it anyway. Something compelled me to take it. Because I thought I could challenge myself to try and make it more than it is. Now, you've already seen the result, so now some insights into the process behind it. This image works for me now. Classic black and white is always welcome. Notice how the water shimmers with the texture of silvery highlights now. You didn't see that in the blue water. And the bright white of the chairs contrasts with the darker water. The final touch was turning the original image on its side. This adds a surreal and nonsensical aspect to the photo, defiance of gravity. So what I encourage you to do is explore your own what ifs during your travels. Challenge yourselves to turn boring images into eclectic ones. Embrace new ways of seeing as part of your creative journey. Now, you may have noticed a lot of black and white photos in this presentation. Black and white is another tool in your toolbox. Use it to add a classic look to a photo where you have either a very dull color palette, black and white will rescue you, or when you have a color riot. Now, a color riot is too many colors all competing with each other, and it confuses the poor viewer. They don't know what to look at. There's so many things pulling their attention. Also, converting some of your photos to black and white is certain to get a viewer's attention because a few black and white photos really stand out from a whole bunch of color images. Greeting the dawning of a new day in Florida while enjoying a cup of coffee. I was inspired to put my coffee down for a second and pick up a camera. It really is that simple when you're in the moment and practicing the art of seeing. I'm a fan of street art, so I keep an eye out for it on my travels. I think beauty and wisdom can be found in street art. Right place, right time with the right eyes. Catania, Italy. Upon exiting a narrow street and landing in this piazza, I chanced to meet the woman in red. Will I meet her again on my next visit to Catania? Who knows? The future is uncertain. And so, I took 6 shots of her from different angles to make sure I could preserve the memory of the visit and to get the photo that I wanted. So the key tip here, slow down. When something captures your eye, respect that and strive to take between 5 and 10 different images of that subject from different perspectives. You'll be very glad that you did. What would a travel portfolio be without some foodie shots put into the mix? I shared photos like this one with friends back home via WhatsApp and Messenger, and they cursed me out for sending them food porn. They were envious, especially the Italian ones. Now, food is universal to all cultures, and yet most cultures seek to elevate food as a proud expression of their uniqueness. So that is certainly worth a photograph or 3. And food is the bridge that connects us. There's nothing people enjoy more than you enjoying the food of their culture. It's friendships are built over that. So if you're attending a special event during your travels, be sure to photograph them as part of your happen philosophy. When I travel to Europe, I typically attend a Formula One Grand Prix race. I know that after the race ends, that the drivers take a celebration lap to salute the track marshals and the race fans. I also know that the track marshals reciprocate by waving their brightly colored signal flags. This was the unique shot I planned to capture, and I got it. At the racetrack, or any event for that matter, look for what goes on behind the scenes. What is unique to that event? At a racetrack, that's a visit to the paddock where the mechanics are working on the cars. Now, what do you see in this image? I see a contrast between man and machine. Hands working on a machine, and yet a hand is also a type of machine. Consider the soft, fluid flexibility and amazing dexterity of the human hand, in contrast to the car, which is solid, unchanging, almost stoic in a sense. Machines serve man, yet man must serve machines to keep them operational. This is an endless symbiotic loop. What do you see? What else do you see? Couldn't resist. Another rule of thirds. See how easy and effective it is? The easy answer to the horizontal question. The sky was way more interesting than the water. Therefore, more sky, less water. Now, an iceberg is an iconic seasonal addition to Newfoundland's local vibe. It is natural and it is a happen image. So we probably spent about 3 hours driving around trying to find an iceberg. My friend had an iceberg tracker on her phone. She said, "Oh, we have to go to this town." So we made this detour about 2 hours out of our way just to photograph this iceberg, to see one. It was worth it. So if it catches your eye, take the photo. Trust your artistic instincts. Go beyond the first image. Is there something else there that would make a great photo? The flowers are on the lower slopes of Stromboli volcano. We passed them on our way to view the active crater. They reminded me a little bit of the fireworks exploding. and of the volcano itself spewing lava a few hours later. The large palm leaves were in a garden in Palermo. Their strong, defined lines, the lighting and shading, and their face-to-face orientation really appealed to me, so I took the photo. Now, do you want to take better photographs? If so, expose yourself to the photographic works of others. Very easy to do this online or by looking at books or by visiting a museum or a gallery show. Seek inspiration and new ideas from other artists in other genres. Inspiration can be the fuel of creativity. Do you want to take better photographs? Then expose yourself to the ideas of others. Study creativity as a way of exploring your own creative process, as a way of finding inspiration and new ways to experiment with your photography, both while traveling abroad and while at your home base. The books you see up on the screen happen to be 3 of my faves. I want to take better photographs. Integral to that desire, I've been thinking a lot about creativity over the past decade. It's fascinating to me, specifically how we choose to meet, to explore, and to express our creativity, or how some of us avoid those meetings and the reasons why. The 2 volumes of Meditations on Photography are another way that I decided to share what I've learned about the art of seeing. They each offer 30 creativity meditations specific to photography, yet many of them are also applicable to life and other arts. And these are paired with 15 creativity exercises to explore the meditations and sharpen your art of seeing. They are available on indigo.ca. Please buy Canadian. They're also on Amazon, but I think Jeff Bezos has enough yachts and rocket ships to keep him busy. Okay, as promised, way back near the beginning of our workshop, it's time to dive deeper into happens by pairing it with some ways it can be explored so we can utilize it as a challenge checklist on our trip. Did we get photos in every category of happens? Now, what do you see in this photo? Notice the position and spacing of the statue in relation to the wallpaper behind it. Look inside the oval of the statue. Did you catch how I straightened up the reclining statue by adding a diagonal tilt to the wallpaper behind it? Notice how the statue splits the palm trees. How about the contrast between the softer curved lines of the statue and the hard straight lines of the building and the piazza? This is how a photograph gets made, with 4 or 5 decisions on how to best compose the image. This is the art of seeing. Please feel free to take a screenshot of this slide with your smartphone or your computer. It can be used as a handy reference to help you get focused before you pick up your camera. You may wish to keep a printed copy with your camera gear, or why not even tuck a small copy in your passport in preparation for your next trip? Then it'll be there for you. An important reminder, anyone can take a photograph. The question to be answered, do we want to make our photographs? As mentioned way back near the beginning, and so important, it bears repeating, it begins and ends with you. Your camera, a machine, is just a tool that needs you to unlock its potential. It begins with a self-assessment and investment in your creativity. So again, those important questions. What is our creative why? Are we inspired and curious today? Is our comfort zone too comfortable? How will we push our creative boundaries the next time we pick up our camera? Are we open to possibilities and creative growth? Keep asking yourselves these questions every so often and reflect on how your answers may or may not have changed. This is your creative evolution. So our 4th and last exercise is for you to create a list of creativity promises that are time bound. This exercise links back to our first one. It's about your creative mindset. Only this time, you now have the happens method and a cluster of photographic techniques we explored today, which you can apply to your creative mindset. With this exercise, we're going beyond simply asking the question, what if I could take better photographs? You are now stating a promise with specifics. I will take better photographs by practicing the art of seeing and by using techniques like the rule of thirds, wallpaper, and borders. So please take a couple of minutes with your pens and paper. Okay, so we're learning a little close on time, and we've still got some good stuff to cover. And this one's kind of personal anyway for you, so we'll kind of skip the sharing with the group for this one if that's okay with you folks. One last thing. This is the S in happens. Your personal safety starts with committing to an awareness of it. Assess your environment. How do you feel? Do you feel safe in the environment? How might people respond if you began photographing them? Also important, are you in the way? Are you creating an obstacle because you're so wrapped up in your photography? Personal positioning is about your safety and being respectful of other people you're sharing the environment with. Even while walking, stick to a side of the street and close to the buildings. Keep your camera bag and your camera between you and the building walls to protect from damage or theft. Keeping a low profile in an urban area can be achieved with things like carrying your camera in a reusable shopping bag instead of a fancy low pro camera bag. Also, that branded camera strap advertising your Canon EOS camera or your Nikon is best left in the camera's box. Instead, buy a low-key black strap. They are typically more functional in any case. And awareness in your personal safety is a very wise investment. So our fifth and last exercise, this is your homework for the weekend. What kind of teacher gives homework on a Friday? I do. Write a letter to a friend, or it's a possibility letter. The friend is you, or the friend could be your creative child, or any creative who was an important part of your life, or a creative whom you admire. It's an interesting experiment. You could write this letter and then revisit your answers from some of the exercises we did today and note consistencies or discrepancies. When you've written this, or I should say after this session we've shared together today, let a day or two pass and then sit down and write your letter. Why? To give your subconscious some time to process your workshop experience today. Let it do some work before you wind up writing that. So after 4 decades of globetrotting, I can heartily endorse this philosophy. The photos that you take on your travels are a portal back to that wealth via your memories. The photo you see was taken in a hotel lobby in Modica, Sicily. Vintage suitcases painted white and stacked up as a unique decorative art installation. Living history. If you'd like to learn more about my creative journey or just chat about photography, then please contact me via one of the Insta handles up on the screen. I would welcome the opportunity to learn about your art of seeing journey. Soul Art Studio is a positive creativity space and it's witness to the art of seeing. Fortune Cookie Wisdom showcases those quirky messages and will be a future book. And Speed Kings Incorporated is my racing photography and memorabilia items with an emphasis on Formula One. We are 13 seconds over time. I will now open the floor to Q&A. Let me close out the PowerPoint so I can rejoin you on screen.
Robert, there's a first question from Josephine in the chat.
Yep.
Josephine asked, I didn't want to interrupt a street musician or get a posed photo. Should I have asked for his permission to take his photo after, maybe?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you want to be respectful, so you don't want to interrupt. A lot of times, if you just make eye contact and smile, big warm smile, and hold your camera up and say, can I?
Yeah.
And if you get the smile back or a nod of the head, you can take the picture.
Okay.
It's that simple. You don't have to go up and touch them and, hey, do you mind if I? So you may have to wait until they look up and look at you.
Yeah.
But that's a way of kind of miming communication that you'll see right away by their face. I mean, we're all good readers of body language.
Yeah.
So look at the face and you know right away if somebody doesn't want their picture taken.
Okay. I had a Zoom with me and I was doing the pond, and then I just looked over and it was just like the moment. And I kind of feel weird because it's a great photo, but I don't know if I should share it without having established any kind of consent from him.
Oh, so you did get the photo.
Oh, I did. That's why I was wondering if, yeah. And, the moment's passed, but what would I do in future? I wasn't close enough to establish eye contact, as they're saying with the camera.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. If you have that long lens out, then you can do that. But again, if you get it in profile where it's hard to recognize the person and you're not using it for commercial purposes to sell anything.
Yeah.
So I think that I can't remember, that's Creative Commons or some kind of copyright that it's okay if it's being used for non-commercial purposes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you're not printing copies and selling them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful, by the way.
Thank you.
So
Anyone else?
Lots of praise in the chat. Lots of thank yous. We can take a few more questions before I close. Any other questions? No? Okay. So then I'll close. So, Robert, thanks very, very much for this very informative and inspiring workshop. And as I mentioned earlier, this is our last workshop. We've done 30 in all. This is the 10th in the third series. And I want to thank everyone who's been coming regularly or off and on over the last 3 years. Please check the Accenti site for recordings of previous workshops. And I'd also like to invite you to check out Accenti's Festival of the Arts, titled The Many Accents of Italy in the World, which will take place on from June 26th to 28th, 2025 in Charlottetown at the University of Prince Edward Island. Check out the call for proposals and perhaps consider submitting a project to present. I want to thank Maria Pia Spadafora, behind the scenes, our technical host for this series and for the previous 2 series of workshops. And last but never least, thank you all participants for attending this Accenti workshop, which was made possible through the financial support of Employment and Social Development Canada as part of the New Horizons Seniors Program. I hope to see you at our next series, and I hope you have a great weekend, and February starting, and it's a short month, so winter's almost over. So see you in the springtime.